Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Carpathian Mountains in western Poland. The rolling hills here are covered in thick forests of European beech, silver fir, Norway spruce, sycamore maple, and mountain pine, with dwarf juniper and green alder forming dense pockets. The largely uninterrupted forests here host red deer, roe deer, wild boar, and chamois. The predators here are some dangerous and wily critters, including wolves, Eurasian lynx, wildcats, and brown bears. This little bit of wilderness is the focus of some big controversies. Poland's national management policy allows for a balanced utilization of resources, such as timber. Companies are allotted a specific amount of timber to harvest to provide for the nation's exports and national use, but this policy is not without its detractors. The Wild Carpathian Initiative and Greenpeace have been monitoring timber harvests here and opposing the management of the forests under the logic that wilderness should stay wild and untouched by human development. They point out that timber harvests upset the lives of the 150 Polish brown bears and use disruptive tactics to drive home their points. During the fall of 2023, eco-activists were attempting to prove logging activity had driven a brown bear from its den. A pair of activists from Germany, whom we will refer to as Hans and Otto, traveled to the Polish Carpathians to document the evacuation of the brown bear den and point the light of public attention on the policy. Now, the eco-activists' tactics didn't exactly garner them a whole lot of support from those outside of their cause. They were known for harassing foresters and loggers while they did their jobs. Using dangerous tactics like driving metal stakes and nails into trees to ruin chainsaws was dangerous as the chain frequently broke upon contact with the metal, sending the chain whipping around. The dangers of logging were risky enough, and the added danger from the activists' actions only increased the danger to the workers. Michael Zowski, a spokesman for the Polish State Forests, had announced that a camera had been set up just outside the brown bear's den to film activity and monitor the impact logging would have on the snoozing bear. Most people know how massive brown bears can be, and European brown bears are no exception. They are known to reach around 8 feet tall and weigh in at around 1,000 pounds, which puts them slightly smaller than brown bears in Alaska and western North America. After arriving near the den, Hans and Otto had planned to execute a publicity stunt and simply walk up to the brown bear's den and peer inside. Once they had footage of the vacant bear den, any opposition to their perspective would be silenced. The disruption caused by the timber harvesting operation would receive the negative press they intended, and they may be able to develop more interest in ecological awareness amongst the public. As the Germans approached the brown bear den, they were bold and sure of their purpose and actions. They were convinced that the bear would have fled its den, with the loud engines and massive machines tearing through the forest. Hans and Otto confidently walked around the opening of the brown bear den and recorded a video of the vacant dwelling. After only a few seconds, the video showed a huge brown bear head popping out of the den opening. The sudden presence of the brown bear sent Hans and Otto's world into a tailspin. They scrambled back as the bear squeezed through the den opening with an ominous glare. As they fled through the forest, the bear pursued the duo and gained ground on the men quickly. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the activists likely ran faster than they were aware they could. Hans was unfortunate in that a tree root reached up and tripped him as he fled. Before he could regain his feet, the brown bear was upon him, in a frenzy of claws and teeth. There is no source I could find that indicated where Otto had fled, but I'm sure he made it safely. The brown bear tore Hans from head to toe before deciding to return to its den and the piece of hibernation for which it had prepared. Once the bear had left the attack scene, first responders arrived to retrieve Hans and treat his injuries. He was airlifted to a hospital and initially listed in serious condition. Following the brown bear attack on Hans and Otto, the Wild Carpathians Initiative issued a public statement clarifying that the activists should not have disturbed the bear as it prepared for hibernation. The irony of the eco-activists being mauled by a brown bear they were trying to prove had fled the forest due to the timber harvesting efforts apparently went over their heads. There are estimated to be 8,000 brown bears in Poland, in 3 isolated mountainous regions. Poland has recently formed a special police division dedicated to frightening brown bears away from cities and towns. Brown bears in Europe are reportedly less aggressive than brown bears in North America. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Is there a balance that can be achieved between the needs of bears and human civilization? Do bears need human intervention, or are they better off just being left alone? Did the activists disturb the brown bear more than the nearby logging did? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Sierra County, California, near a little town called Downeyville. This is a high-elevation area, with the town sitting at 2,918 feet high and nearby mountains stretching to over 7,000 feet. The continental climate here makes for hot, arid summers and cold, snowy winters. Sierra County is a popular spot for mountain bikers, anglers, and hikers. The Yuba River runs right through town and presents kayakers and rafters a shot at some summer excitement. The Lost Sierras is the name of the mountains around the town, and their boundary is larger than the state of Delaware. Wildlife abounds here, especially mule deer and waterfowl. The predators around Downeyville include bobcats, cougars, coyotes, and recently a pack of 3 wolves were found to have migrated here, likely from Idaho. Grizzly bears no longer wander these mountains, having last been spotted over 100 years ago. But black bears are making a big comeback, with some alarming results. Around the town of Downeyville, black bears have become a real problem. Residents don't seem to understand that leaving their trash out, feeding their pets outside, or leaving any food scents around their home is dangerous. Wildlife officials had to euthanize a black bear after it tried to break into a gymnasium at a school. Bears raid refrigerators and even take a dip in private pools whenever the weather's unbearably hot. Security cameras on homes have captured bears strolling through people's gardens and searching through trash bins. As soon as May began, the Sierra County Sheriff's Office was inundated with phone calls and reports of black bears breaking into houses, cabins, vehicles, and boldly standing their ground when confronted by people. This behavior was a harbinger of terrible things to come. Patrice Miller was a 71-year-old retiree who lived on her own, aside from her cats. She fed them outside on her porch and had been struggling to remove the trash from her property, given her mobility wasn't the best. Black bears took notice of the alluring and tempting scents around her property and had been boldly investigating, hoping for an easy meal. At one point, Patrice punched a black bear after it tried to enter her home. After that incident, she had metal bars placed over her windows just to make sure the bears couldn't get inside. Patrice was a regular at the local store, where she would pick up a few groceries and food for her cats every week. One of the clerks there knew Patrice quite well, and when she hadn't been in for a few days, decided someone needed a check on her. Patrice's neighbors reported the repeated presence of a black bear that had been entering and leaving Patrice's house several times. The sheriff's office was notified and agreed to perform a welfare check on Patrice by stopping by her home on November 8, 2023. As soon as deputies arrived, they noticed that Patrice's front door had been knocked from its casing. There were piles of bear scat with bloody bear tracks crisscrossing the deck. Entering Patrice's home, the deputies found a chaotic scene. There was furniture and random items strewn about with more bear scat and bloody tracks. Further into the home, the body of Patrice was located, or what was left of her. The bear that had entered the home had eaten a significant portion of her corpse, but was nowhere to be found. Given the information provided by neighbors and the amount of track evidence in the home, deputies estimated that the bear had been accessing Patrice's home for several days. The fact that it had been feeding off her body didn't necessarily mean that the bear had killed her. The deputies weighed the possibility of Patrice dying of natural causes, and the decay of her body being enough to bring the bear into her home. Her body was gathered up and sent to the coroner's office for forensic analysis while wildlife officials pondered what should be done with the bear. Given it had eaten human flesh, they knew the bear would affiliate human beings with food from now on. They decided they would need to set out box traps around Patrice's property and hopefully catch it to pull DNA from its claws for comparison to samples collected in her home. In California, it's difficult for wildlife officers to get a permit to kill a nuisance bear. The state has layers of bureaucracy and piles of red tape that have to be navigated before a cull order is approved. California Department of Fish and Wildlife regulations require that a property owner request a depredation permit to have a nuisance bear killed, but with the property owner, Patrice, having died, they initially denied the application. After 2 days, the trap was successful in capturing a black bear. At first, officers believed they had caught a female and would be required to release it, but after sedating the bear, a biologist was called in and determined the bear was a male. While under sedation, DNA was pulled from its paws and sent to a laboratory for analysis. After the DNA analysis, the male bear was deemed responsible for Patrice's death. Because the bear was a male, the cull permit was issued, and it was euthanized. For some time, Patrice's investigators considered it possible that she had died from natural causes, but after the coroner's analysis, it was noted that she had died from injuries sustained during a prolonged bear attack. For those of you wondering how they would know if Patrice had died of a sudden health issue as opposed to injuries from a bear, the telltale evidence is explained as follows. In the event of an internal injury like a heart attack or a stroke, the deceased person's blood remains in the body and coagulates, forming clots where it pools. In the event a person bleeds to death, this coagulation doesn't occur due to the loss of blood. After analyzing Patrice's injuries, they decided her fatal wounds were from paw slashes and bites to her neck, which caused her to lose blood and her life. Patrice's death is the first human fatality known to be caused by a black bear in California state history. State wildlife officials point out that 99.9% of black bears are not public safety hazards, but I point out that 0.1% is atypical and very deadly. Around 35,000 black bears are roaming the 50,000 square miles that make up the state of California, with a density of 1 black bear per 1.43 square miles, including urban areas. Patrice's death has led to wildlife authorities reconsidering black bear population management strategies, despite the numerous bureaucratic hurdles. With black bears weighing up to 500 pounds and populations now encroaching on the suburbs of Los Angeles, Californians are forced to balance personal safety and their appreciation of nature and activities in bear country. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Why didn't authorities intervene earlier, given all the problems Patrice had with nuisance black bears? Why wasn't she more boisterous with her fear of the bears and the dangers they presented to her? Should the neighbors have investigated after seeing the black bear enter Patrice's house the first time? Why are California officials so reticent to cull problem bears, like the bears that plagued Patrice? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Catoctin Mountains near Gambrill State Park, about 55 miles west of Baltimore, Maryland. Near the town of Frederick, in Frederick County, is a private housing development on the 7600 block of Iron Gate Lane. The houses are surrounded by dense stands of white oak, tulip poplar, American elm, black cherry, and Bradford pear trees, with the evergreens being eastern white pine. These trees offer a broad assortment of fruits and nuts seasonally that provide needed calories for many animals, but are particularly important for the area's black bears. White-tailed deer dash among the trees, and turkeys, squirrels, and cottontail rabbits do their best to avoid being eaten by numerous predators. Bobcats, coyotes, and red and gray foxes stalk the shadows of the forest, but the growing population of black bears is most concerning to residents. People living along Iron Gate Lane have been reporting black bear sightings often, with incidents of garbage cans being raided and chicken coops pillaged. Neighbors indicate that they had been visited by black bears roaming through their backyards and climbing trees on their property. Maryland Department of Natural Resources allay public fears by stating that the bears usually stay away from people, but a certain amount of care should be taken. At a little after 9 p.m. on Wednesday, November 16, 2016, 63-year-old Karen Osborne was winding down after a busy day. She and her husband Ronald were retired and were doting grandparents of their grandchildren. Their daughter lived only a few yards away through a stand of trees, so visiting them was easy and enjoyable. The sun had just set when Karen's daughter's dog began barking incessantly. She decided she would use the flashlight feature of her cell phone to light her way through the woods and see what all the fuss was about. Before stepping out the door, she clicked a leash onto her dog's collar, and the two disappeared into the darkness without bear spray or a firearm. As she made her way along the bushy trail and onto the side of her daughter's driveway, she could see her daughter's dog barking at the base of a tree. Suddenly a low rumbling growl encompassed Karen from behind, and she turned to see a black bear towering over her, standing on its hind legs. The bear had emerged from bushes, only a few feet from her, so she had very little time to react to its presence. The angry sow clamped its jaws around Karen's face and tossed its head, sending her sprawling to the ground. As Karen tried to regain her senses, the bear approached her from behind and bit onto her arm, shattering the bones and ripping muscles and tendons. Karen's screams filled the darkness, but no one heard them or responded to her cries. Struggling with the pain and trauma of the sudden attack, Karen was helpless to stop the sow from biting onto the top of her head. The bear's 1.5-inch-long canines punched through her scalp and ripped painful gashes, causing her to scream and flail her arms. Using Karen's scalp as a handle, the sow pulled the woman forward and tried to get a new grip with her jaws on Karen's neck. Using her bunched-up fist to block the sow's jaws, Karen realized this was a fight to the death as far as the bear was concerned. She couldn't just let it tear her apart anymore. She struck out at the bear with her fist in 4 quick punches. The sow didn't flinch, but circled around Karen one more time, looking for a better angle from which to attack. Having worked its way behind Karen, the sow punched her to the ground, face first, with one of its paws. Using her body weight, the sow pinned Karen down and bit several times over her legs, arms, and the back of her head. Each time the bear bit, pain seared through Karen's body, and she twitched in reaction. Pressed face down, Karen could feel the sow's hot, stinky breath pelting the back of her neck. Karen knew there was no way she could resist the bear any longer. It was far too powerful, and her energy was fading. For over 30 minutes, this bear mauled and tore at Karen's flesh, and now the woman was exhausted. The sow was also tired, and breathing heavily as she tried to kill Karen. At the point she had no more energy to resist, Karen curled up into the fetal position and lay still. The bear was pacing around, digging at the ground like a bull, getting ready to charge as it snapped its jaws together menacingly. Groping around slowly, Karen searched for her cell phone. She had to reach out to someone for help, but in the confusion and the speed of the attack, it had been knocked from her grasp, along with the hope of calling the police. As she focused on laying still, Karen felt a hard bump beneath her thigh. She had found her cell phone. Slowly moving her uninjured arm, she retrieved it and tried to dial 911. Her first attempt failed, as well as the next 2, but on her 4th try she managed to get a hold of a male dispatcher. The audio of Karen's call is too graphic to post on YouTube, so I've linked to it on the Patreon link below. Pictures of her injuries and photos of the bear and her cubs are there too. Joining our Cub Tier membership for $3 per month will grant you access to view them and all other photos from attacks, and help us continue to create content like this. Frederick County Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to Karen's location and arrived within 15 minutes of her call. The officers came loaded for bear, literally, with rifles in hand while they secured the scene. Paramedics loaded Karen onto a stretcher as they worked on stopping the bleeding from her numerous wounds. The ambulance rushed Karen to Meritus Medical Center, about 20 miles away, in Hagerstown. While searching for the bear, deputies located a 50-pound cub in a tree, but could not find the sow. While at the trauma center, it was discovered that the bear's initial bite on Karen's face had broken 4 of her teeth, blackened 1 of her eyes, and left her cheek gashed. In its second charge, the bear had bitten through Karen's arm, breaking both bones and severing tendons. In its third charge, the sow had torn her scalp. In its fourth charge, the bear had bitten Karen several times over her legs, head, and arms, and broke her pelvis. Emergency surgery was needed to repair the wounds to her arm, and 78 stitches closed gashes and bites over the rest of her body. On the morning following Karen's attack, Maryland Department of Natural Resources officers tracked the sow. A radio collar had been placed around her neck to gather data regarding bear activity in the area, and was now serving as a beacon, revealing her location. Traps were set out, but the old girl was too wily to take the bait. By 7:50 a.m. on Thursday, November 17th, the sow was shot and killed by the officers. Upon examining her carcass, it was noted she weighed 200 pounds, which isn't large. Her 3 cubs had required quite an investment on her part, and now her protective instincts had left them without her to defend and provide for them. Regarding the 3 cubs, they were caught and examined by wildlife officers. It was determined that they were old enough to fend for themselves, and they were released. Karen was in the hospital for 6 days, recovering from her injuries, before being released to heal at home. Due to her pelvis being broken during the attack, she was left immobile for 6 weeks as her bones were mended. Stating that she was amazed to be alive, Karen took the terrible attack in stride. Although she was upset that the wildlife officers didn't take action to relocate the sow after numerous complaints were lodged about her, Karen stated she felt there was an angel on her shoulder that night. If there was an angel on Karen's shoulder, it undoubtedly is black and blue from the attack. The state of Maryland hosts approximately 2,000 black bears, with their numbers having doubled since 2011. In 2004, the state ended a moratorium on black bear hunting, and recently expanded hunting zones to decrease black bear populations across the state. Over its 12,000 square miles, bear densities in Maryland, including urban areas, indicate that there is a black bear for every 6 square miles. After reviewing the facts surrounding this attack, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think the cubs will continue to raid neighborhood garbage cans, just like they did with their mother? Why did the black bear attack Karen 4 times for over 30 minutes? Was it trying to kill her, or was it trying to protect its cubs? Are you surprised that Karen survived such a prolonged and devastating attack? I know I would probably have given up the ghost much earlier than Karen did. I will gladly read and respond to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.